When Zhirinovsky had been leader of the Liberal Democrats, the party headquarters were in a shabby slum of a building in Fish Alley, just off Sretenka Street. Visitors not aware of the strange ways of Vlad the Mad had been amazed to discover how tawdry it was. This was the way the eccentric fascist had preferred to keep the headquarters, on the grounds that the image spoke of a man of the people, rather than one of the fat cats. But Zhirinovsky was long gone now, and the Liberal Democratic Party had been amalgamated with the other ultra-right and neo-fascist parties into the Union of Patriotic Forces. Its undisputed leader was Igor Komarov, and he was a completely different kind of man. Nevertheless, seeing the logic of showing that the Union of Patriotic Forces permitted itself no expensive indulgences, he kept the Fish Alley building, but maintained his own private offices elsewhere. Trained as an engineer, Komarov had worked under communism, but not for it, until halfway through the Yeltsin period he had decided to enter politics. He had chosen the Liberal Democratic Party, and in a series of covert meetings had stitched together the alliance of all the right-wing elements in Russia into the UPF. By 1998, Komarov was undisputed leader of the ultra-right, and in prime position to play upon the growing despair of the Russian people. Yet among all this poverty and destitution, there was also ostentatious wealth to make the eyes blink. Those who had money had mountains of it, much of it in foreign currency. In the Duma, the delegates shouted and passed resolutions. "It reminds me," said an English foreign correspondent, "of all I ever heard of the last days of the Weimar Republic." The one man who seemed to offer a possible ray of hope was Igor Komarov. Komarov made his mark as a passionate and charismatic popular orator. When he was on the podium, those who recalled the quiet, soft-spoken, fastidious private man were amazed. He quickly mastered the area of his own specialty, the living crowd. He avoided the television interview, aware that though these might work in the West, they were not for Russia. Russians rarely invited people into their homes, let alone the entire nation. Nor was he interested in being trapped by hostile questions. Every speech was stage-managed, but the technique worked. He addressed only rallies of the party faithful, with the cameras under the control of his own filmmaking team. These films were released for nationwide television viewing to be aired complete and unabridged. This he could achieve by buying TV time, instead of relying upon the vagaries of newscasters. His theme was always the same and always popular: Russia, Russia, and again Russia. He inveighed against the foreigners whose international conspiracies had brought Russia to her knees. He clamored for the expulsion of all the blacks, the popular Russian way of referring to Armenians, Georgians, Azeris, and others from the south, many of whom were among the richest of the criminal profiteers. He cried out for justice for the poor, downtrodden Russian people who would one day rise with him to restore the glories of the past. He promised all things to all men. And they heard him. By radio and television, they heard him across the wide steppes. And when he promised them that the angel of death would walk among the crooks and gangsters who had raped their beloved mother Russia, they loved him. In the spring of 1999, at the suggestion of Boris Kuznetsov, his PR advisor, a very clever young man who had graduated from an American Ivy League college, Igor Komarov granted a series of private interviews. Young Boris picked the candidates well, mainly legislators and journalists of the conservative wing across America and Western Europe. The purpose of the reception was to calm their fears. As a campaign, it worked brilliantly. Most arrived expecting to find what they'd been told they would find: a wild-eyed ultra-right demagogue, variously dubbed racist or neo-fascist or both. Instead, they found themselves talking to a thoughtful, well-mannered man in a sober suit. As Komarov spoke no English, it was his PR aide who sat by his side, both guiding the interview and interpreting. Whenever his adored leader said something he knew might be ill-interpreted in the West, Kuznetsov simply translated it into something much more acceptable in English. No one noticed, for he had ensured that none of the visitors understood Russian.